climate talks started yesterday without the usual fanfare. We saw some big political decisions made in Durban last year around finalising amendments to the Kyoto Protocol, to closing down the formal negotiations around the Bali Action Plan and moving it in towards implementation, and streamlining the negotiations towards a new legally binding instrument which covers the commitments of all major emitters by 2015. Kyoto remains an important symbol at these talks. What we've seen is a real focus on how we are actually going to implement the Kyoto Protocol. What are the legal details that need to be resolved before we can actually see amendments to the protocol which will allow its implementation from the 1st of January next year. Australia is central in those negotiations. There's been genuine welcoming of Australia's in principle agreement to participate in the second commitment period from those countries who are seeking to achieve a lasting and effective solution to the climate change problem. Australia also submitted a target under Kyoto yesterday. What it proposes will be its target, preliminary target, under the protocol for the next few years. In that target, there was a couple of important symbolic elements. Firstly, it signalled that Australia was going to reduce emissions below 1990 levels, albeit only marginally. It also included Australia's bipartisan supported full 2020 target range of 5 to 25% reductions on 2000 levels by 2020. And the reason that is important, it is an important signal in a legally binding treaty that Australia is prepared to play its full and fair part in a world which is acting seriously to address the climate change problem. It's also important domestically. In the carbon pricing debate we've had in Australia over recent years, we've often focused on the price that the major emitters will pay if they pollute our air. What we haven't so much focused on is the fact that under our domestic legislation from 2015, for the first time, those major emitters will have an overall cap in emissions in which they have to operate. And it's the decision on that cap that we made in 2015 which will determine Australia's final contribution to short-term emission reductions to the period to 2020. And having the full target range in an international treaty will be important in those discussions, because the Independent Climate Change Authority, which will make recommendations to government on what that final 2020 target should be, has to consider those kinds of undertakings that Australia has made internationally when it makes its recommendations to government on what Australia's final 2020 target will be. Since Australia has submitted its target, we're seeing delegates, NGOs and policy experts starting to scrutinise the detail of that target. And over the next few days, we will see questions raised around the ambition that's associated with the target, how that target was calculated, and the kinds of assumptions that were made by Australia in calculating what it thought its Kyoto target will be. And that will put again the spotlight at this meeting on Australia. But overall, the mood of the meeting is one of a business-like attitude. With many of the key political decisions made in Durban last year, delegates and parties are really focused on finalising the details of how the Durban agreements will be implemented and how we move forward in a world where countries are acting but they're not acting fast enough, and how we can use the international process to increase the ambition of the actions that are being taken.